Welcome to Professional Learning from the Education Support Team with Amy and Mary. Thank you for joining us as we highlight the importance of vocabulary for student learning. We believe that teaching vocabulary effectively can be achieved through a variety of strategies. We are passionate about student learning and believe that embedded vocabulary can occur with mindfulness.
The learning intention for today's presentation is that we, as teachers, learn to understand the importance of teaching vocabulary. We will be successful when we can recognise and understand the 3 tiers of vocabulary, understand that EALD students may come to school with only 5,000 words in their first language and very few, if any, in English, along with understanding how to embed vocabulary into the classroom learning environment.
So what is vocabulary and why do we need to teach it? Vocabulary is all around us, but we cannot assume that all students acquire language in the same way. The way we speak is not always the way we read. The way we write requires a more sophisticated approach to using language. Vocabulary is all about words, the words in a language or a special set of words you are trying to learn. In a nutshell, vocabulary is a set of familiar words within a person's language. It is these words that must be understood in order to communicate effectively with other people. As educators, we need to consider that there are different types of vocabulary, such as oral, which refers to the words we use in speaking, or recognize in listening. This, along with the writing process, is intertwined with the process of reading. It is therefore the explicit teaching of vocabulary which allows students to access academic language and discourse.
But you might be asking yourself, don't we already teach vocabulary? It consists of 3 different word levels or tiers, and each level has its own implications for instruction. Word levels are based on frequency, complexity, and meaning. As teachers, we know that a robust vocabulary supports reading comprehension and reinforces understanding of new and difficult text. Using a tiered approach to vocabulary instruction assists in the development of language acquisition and promotes a strong foundation for literacy across grade levels and content areas.
The first step in addressing vocabulary issues is to recognize that learning vocabulary is not an automatic process. According to Paul Duffy, a respected ESL academic, the teaching of vocabulary is one of the most neglected areas in teaching. Let's begin our discussion with the 3 tiers of vocabulary. Tiered vocabulary is an organizational framework for categorizing words and suggests that some of these words require explicit teaching. So what is tiered vocabulary? Why does it matter? Vocabulary matters because readers can't fully understand texts without knowing the meaning of the words within the text. Mary will explain more.
In this visual representation, you can see Tier 1 words are the most common, while Tier 3 represents the more technical or academic vocabulary. We will briefly touch on each of these tiers and narrow our focus to how we can explicitly teach Tier 2 words to support students.
Looking at this slide, you can see that Tier 1 words are phonetically easy to read and include common nouns, verbs and adjectives. The examples here such as baby, clock and run are very common words.
This slide identifies Tier 2 words which are generally high in nature, yet essential to learning growth in all areas of literacy. This is where grammar rules become lenient and explicit instruction becomes necessary. Words such as obvious, complex, and informed reflect the use of prefixes and suffixes.
As you can see, Tier 3 words are not used as frequently, but are central to building knowledge and conceptual understanding. Looking at some of the examples, one can see that they require explicit instruction, and yes, there are times that even the teacher has to look them up. I have often practiced the word anti-disestablishmentarianism, but sometimes struggle to spell it. Maybe you have one of those that you try to practice. The teaching of vocabulary needs to be embedded in classroom learning. We need to raise the words to the awareness of students in all classes. It needs to be taught mindfully. This is to deliberately introduce it and encourage its use within the classroom over a period of time and in a variety of contexts. Tier 2 words usually have multiple meanings, are essential for building formal academic language across subject areas, are necessary for reading comprehension, are characteristics of a mature language user, and are descriptive words that add detail.
Some of the following strategies may be familiar, but all of them can be embedded within classroom learning. Today we will discuss context clues, finding the definition, visualizing, practice, and using vocabulary. Reading logistically rich text aloud to children for at least 20 minutes a day exposes all of them to rich vocabulary. Students need explicit teaching to understand text models and time to practice the grammar and language through repetition and recycling. Students need to also have access to vocabulary before comprehension activities are made available.
Word meanings can be constructed from the clues before, within, and after the sentence with the unknown word. There are also clues within the word. The context surrounding an unknown word can help a student understand its structure, how it's used, and ultimately its meaning. A focus on synonyms, descriptions, syntax, and word parts are clues that can support student comprehension in a text. Teachers will already have decided the vocabulary to be introduced. They will engage students in discussion of new vocabulary. A good strategy is to use the word in a variety of ways drawing attention to the parts. Students can also engage in using dictionaries and/or a thesaurus to support understanding. It is important for teachers to unpack the language in order to design language-focused tasks and activities that engage all students. Close activities encourage students to work collaboratively. There are a variety of gap-fill activities students can engage in. Opportunities to practice can incorporate many aspects of literacy, such as synonyms, contrasting in text, understanding descriptions, a grammar focus, looking at examples, and breaking words apart. There will be a few resources at the end of this presentation to help you access and use some of these activities.
Visualization is equally important with vocabulary. Oral language is key to understanding, especially when guided by the classroom teacher. This is where explicit teaching begins. Students can be helped by linking words with pictures. Reading texts and targeting vocabulary from these is a great benefit. Morphology can be used to look at parts of the word. Word walls are useful, no matter the age of students. Playing with words or building a classroom culture where words are interesting can be enjoyable too.
Here we are looking at using the word. Teachers can create opportunities to use sophisticated language with their students in conversations and lessons. Reading linguistically rich texts aloud to children for at least 20 minutes a day exposes all of them to rich vocabulary. Students need to have access to the vocabulary before comprehensible input happens. In this example, the word pale is not recognized by the student and can become an opportunity for discussion in context. As mentioned already, Paul Duffy is a leading expert in teaching of English as a second language, and he wants to encourage educators to take a fresh look at vocabulary. We can do this in so many ways. We can teach all students, including EALD students, to help them grow and learn and comprehend and make meaning of the world. This model can help you to guide the teaching of new vocabulary. Select a word depending on the reading material. Say the word carefully with the students. Take the opportunity to break the word apart and allow for repeated exposure over time. It's a great model and it's there for you to begin with selecting, explain, explore, and consolidate. After selecting words to target, explain. Here are some strategies to explain vocabulary with students. Once this process has been completed, students can begin to use the vocabulary in discussion and language activities using repetition. You start with saying the word. Say the word carefully and with clear articulation. The next step is to write. Write the word. Notice the suffixes, prefixes, and root words. The third step is to define. Provide a definition, something that students can understand. Follow that with demonstration. Give a meaningful example. In a variety of contexts would be even better. And finally, clarify. Ask students to provide further examples. And this is an opportunity to clarify any misconception. Have a go.
These resources can be found on the New South Wales DET website. Search for DET Readings Stage 2 Vocabulary. And here are some more resources that can also be found on the New South Wales DET website. Search for Readings DET Stage 3 Vocabulary. And although these are targeted towards Stage 3, they can be used for Stage 2 students as well. We would like to finalise this presentation with a quote by Theodore Zeus Geisel, aka Dr. Zeus.
The more that you read, the more things you will know.
The more that you learn, the more places you'll go.
We hope you have found this presentation useful. Thank you for listening to Amy
and Mary
from the
Education Support Team.